America has a housing crisis. Let me provide you with a few numbers. According to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, for housing to be considered affordable, people should pay at most 30% of their income in housing. If you pay more than 30%, you are considered cost burden. If you pay more than 50%, you are considered severely cost burden. Today, nearly half of renters are cost burden, and nearly a quarter of renters are severely cost burden. Rent is usually the first thing a family pays. If you're paying half your income in rent, you're forced to choose between food, utilities, transportation, to say nothing about health care. Yet today, rents are rising faster than incomes. Low income and communities of color are being displaced by gentrification. Last year, more than 550,000 people experienced homelessness every night. And for extremely low income renters, there is a shortage of 7 million affordable renter homes. In 1948, Eleanor Roosevelt led the United Nations to adopt a Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Article 25 of that declaration includes housing as a basic human right. But the United States hasn't ratified that declaration, and to this day fails to live up to those standards. That is unacceptable, and it's no accident. It's the result of decades of deliberate choices from policymakers to segregate housing, and more recently, to reduce the federal government's partnership for affordable housing. The federal government has long provided a home for some, often at the expense of others. Communities of color were systematically denied wealth-building opportunities in the form of property ownership, and faced blatant discrimination in accessing housing. By the end of the 20th century, Congress and the Nixon and Reagan administrations systematically shifted federal housing policies to produce less housing, focused on rental assistance rather than construction, and ultimately all were less impactful. The effects of these decisions linger today. The federal government needs to get back into the game of housing policy and treat housing like the fundamental human right that it is, and we know it should be. I recently released a report detailing some of these challenges and potential solutions, titled Locked Out: Reversing Federal Housing Failures and Unlocking Opportunity. The proposals are simple. We should begin by fully funding all public housing capital maintenance needs, repealing the outrageous cap on public housing construction, and building millions of new homes for low-income people. We need to double homelessness assistance funding, permanently fund the federal government's interagency response to homelessness, and expand legal assistance for people facing evictions, and promote housing first policies that give people a home without preconditions. We cannot make people with serious challenges jump through unnecessary hoops. We should create a renter's tax credit or make Section 8 vouchers an entitlement program like food assistance or Medicaid. At the same time, we should commit to building more affordable housing through the Housing Trust Fund and the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit. No matter where you start in life, everyone should have a chance at home ownership. The mortgage interest deduction, America's most expensive housing policy, should be converted to a tax credit that is more fair and available to all. And Congress should atone for past sins by creating a new restorative justice home loan guarantee program and reinstating a tax credit for first-time home buyers. It has been more than 50 years since Lyndon Johnson signed the Fair Housing Act, but housing discrimination remains. The federal government should finalize the affirmative furthering fair housing rule, prohibit all forms of housing discrimination, and remove housing barriers for people with criminal records. We should double enforcement funding so landlords are actually following the laws on the books. Some may look at these recommendations and say they are too expensive or not within our capacity. But the cost of inaction is far greater. We must not deny another generation the wealth-building opportunity that comes from home ownership. The federal government has ignored this human rights crisis for too long. Now is the time to get to work.